Okay, Andreas, have you got a limiting belief? Can you identify a limiting belief that you'd like to change?
Yes.
Okay. So the first thing I'd like you to do is note, how do you represent that belief? Is it something you see, hear, or feel, or a combination of those things?
It is something I see
Okay.
and feel.
And feel. Good. Now we're going to do this content free, so these are questions for you to consider, and just let me know when you have your own information about the questions, okay? So the first question is, how do you know it's a limiting belief? In other words, what's the evidence?
I can see it,
Okay.
and it seems quite blurry.
Okay, it seems quite blurry. So how do you know it's a limitation for you? Are there consequences in the world, in your world, that you have through holding this belief?
Yes.
Okay, so note the consequences, okay? Good. Now, what I'd like you to consider, having this belief, is there a positive intention for it? In other words, there'd be a particular time, place, a situation, a context where the belief got formed, and within those circumstances, that context, there may have been an intention for forming that belief.
Yes.
So under those contextual conditions, it may make sense to have that belief.
Yeah.
Good. By the way, do you live in a very different context today?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So this is often how, sometimes beliefs that we think are limiting, within the context that they're formed, it makes sense to have them in that context at that time, under those circumstances. Okay. So you know what the intention is for the belief.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Now, before we go changing beliefs, okay, it's very easy to change a belief. Before we do that, what I'd like you to consider, especially the fact that you live in a very different context today, or a series of different contexts that you're engaged with in the world, your current life. With that in mind, do you have some idea of what you would like to believe? You don't believe it yet, but you would like to believe it. Something to replace the old one with.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So what I'd like you to do is form a mental image, because the other one had a mental image, so form a mental image of the content. I'd like you to kind of step into the world where you have this as a belief. So you're now in the future. You're aware what it's going to feel like to have that, and what it sounds.
Yeah.
And I'd like you to note the flow-on consequences in your life of holding this belief. Now, there may be consequences in your states, the states that you embody, your behaviours, what you do, the actions you take in the world, and your perception, how you perceive the world, okay, and how you perceive yourself. Just note the likely flow-on consequences of this change.
Yes.
Good. Now, back to having this as a new belief. You don't believe it yet, but this is something you're considering as a potential new belief. If you were to have this, do you know what the intention is for having it? In other words, what do you want through having this as a new belief?
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Good. Positive intention. So if you were to compare the consequences of having this as a belief against the intention, how are they? Do the consequences, are they a good fit? Do they match up? Are they aligned with the intention? Okay. So this is something that's worth having.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to do some extra checking. I'm going to have you do some extra checking. So you know the signal you have from yes, from your own conscious. You know when something feels right for you.
Yep.
And you know when something doesn't.
Yeah.
So you have those signals. You've done those before. Sorry. You've arranged with your own conscious to have those signals in the past, so you have those signals currently.
Yeah.
So here's the proposal to your own conscious. The proposal is we're going to recode the limiting belief as a doubt, so you no longer believe it. And we're going to take this content and build a new belief, and we're going to create it in a way that's generative, so it has lots of useful, positive flow-on consequences for you, which is your states, your behaviour, okay, your perception, and your overall experience. Okay. So the request to your own conscious is taking the limiting belief, coding it as a doubt, and then building in this content as a new belief, that's generative. Is that acceptable to you, mind conscious?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I'd like you to thank your unconscious mind. So we're going to ask him along the way to give us guidance and to consult with us as we do the work, okay? So we're now ready to find out what are the submodality differences between the limiting belief and something you doubt. Okay? So what I'd like you to do is think about something you doubt. Now, I want to remind you, you already know a lot about submodalities. You know, in terms of visual differences, in terms of submodalities, there could be differences in terms of size, brightness, colour, direction of lighting, foreground, background, okay, whether something's moving or still, framed or unframed, okay. So what I want you to do is take the doubt and the limiting belief, and I want you to compare the two things, something you doubt and something, the current limiting belief. And what I'd like you to tell me are only the differences in the visual submodalities.
The visual, okay.
We'll also go for auditory later and kinesthetic as well.
So with a doubt, the doubt is a bit bigger in size.
Okay, so doubt is larger when you compare with the limiting belief. Okay, so the image is larger. Okay, any other differences?
It's a bit more clear, still blurry, but more clear.
So the doubt is clearer. Okay, so it's clearer than the limiting belief. Any other differences?
That's it.
What about spatial location?
Both roughly in the same place.
Roughly in the same place. Okay. How do you know that's a doubt?
Because I know that I eventually could get it if I wanted to. I already tried.
Okay. So you may or may not be able to achieve this.
Yeah.
Okay. Whereas the limiting belief is something you believe. You know that's true.
Yeah.
Under current circumstances.
Yeah. I feel like it goes beyond what I can do.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's get some auditory differences in terms of submodality. So I'm going to have you compare the limiting belief and the doubt. I'd like you to find out what are the differences in terms of your auditory experience.
Both the same. There's no sound.
There's no sound in either. Okay. Any internal dialogue in either?
With the limiting belief one.
Yeah. So you've got a voice.
Yeah.
Self-talk. Okay.
Yeah.
Internal dialogue. Note the form the internal dialogue takes in terms of location, rhythm, tempo, tonal range, whether it's mono or stereo.
So the voice is about here.
Okay. So it's to your right and slightly behind. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it pretty much.
Okay, that's all the information we need. Okay. Fine. Kinesthetically, so be aware of the kinesthetics when you compare the sensations you have for the limiting belief and the sensations for the doubt. So the area, remind you of some kinesthetic submodalities. There's the area, sensation has an area, extent, how size in a way, texture, temperature, moisture, vibration, tempo, movement, direction of movement if it has movement.
So with the doubt, it's more around here.
Okay, so it's around your midline and tummy, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And where's the limiting belief?
It's funny as it may sound, in my feet.
Okay. Okay. Any other differences? Differences in texture, pressure, rhythm, vibration?
Temperature.
Temperature.
So the limiting belief feels cold.
Okay, so it's cold. Whereas the doubt is just what is that?
It's body temperature.
Body
It doesn't
temperature. Okay.
really feel like a temperature at all.
Okay. Look, we've got enough information. Okay. So what I'd like you to do now is we'll put all that aside. What I'd like you to do is find something, a belief that you have, something you know to be true, that's generative, and the evidence that it's generative, it has positive flow-on effects into many areas of your life.
Yep. Got one.
Good. And we're going to compare those two. I'm going to start with visual submodalities. Any differences? Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Okay.
So with the...
This is the generative belief, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about the generative belief in terms of submodality differences.
Okay, so the generative one is the image is large.
Okay.
Very
Large.
Yeah.
So it's large, whereas the limiting belief would be smaller in relationship to that.
Yeah. It's a little square.
It's a little square. Is it framed, is it?
Yeah.
What about the generative belief? Framed or unframed?
Unframed.
Unframed, okay. Okay. So the generative belief is larger and it's unframed. So the generative belief and the limiting belief is smaller and it's framed. Any other differences?
The generative one is got movement.
It's got
So it's a movie.
So it's moving. Okay, so it's a movie, right?
It's got color.
Yep.
Yeah, mainly.
Okay. And the limiting belief is still, is it?
Still, and it's very fuzzy.
It's fuzzy. Okay, so generative belief clearer.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's, or is it clear?
Very clear.
It's very clear, okay. Okay. And the generative beliefs in colour, what about the limiting belief?
The limiting belief does have color, but again, it's very fuzzy, so...
Okay. Any differences in the quality of the colour? If you compare, so for example, I can have a colour which is very rich in saturation, or I can have a colour that's very washed out. Or I can have a colour which has an absence of particular, I can have something in colour but it might have an absence of a particular hue. Or it may have an extra, it may have a filter on it in terms of colour hue. These are just differences in how people perceive colour. I'll rephrase that, how people represent colour.
The limiting belief is, it's a bit more washed out.
A bit washed out, okay. I think we have enough information, okay? So you've already done the preparation work, okay? So you've considered the content you'd like to create as a generative belief, okay? You know the intention for doing so, and you know what the flow-on consequences are. So you've got evidence that it will be generative if you were to hold that as a belief.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we know the differences between a limiting belief and a doubt.
Yep.
So we could take the limiting belief and recode it as a doubt, and then we can take the content you prepared that you want to have as a generative belief, and we can give it the coding of a generative belief. So here we go. So I'd like to take the limiting belief. Now, it's smaller than a doubt, so make it slightly larger. It's fuzzier, so make it a little bit clearer. And what I want you to do is bring the sensation from your feet up to your midline, in your tummy region, and change the temperature so it becomes just normal body temperature. So that you're giving the limiting belief all the submodality characteristics of the doubt. So the inner dialogue you had will go. The voice over there disappears, the image becomes larger, clearer, the sensation moves to the midline, the tummy region, the midline becomes body temperature.
Okay.
Okay, do you believe it? Is that true?
I mean, I doubt it.
Okay, terrific. Well, you can just leave it in doubt. Okay, and at some point it will probably just drop out and disappear. has something of very little or no relevance. So, what I'd like you to take the content that you want to turn into a generative belief, okay? And you're going to give it all the submodality characteristics of a generative belief, so it becomes larger, unframed, okay? It's moving, it's a movie, it's in colour, it becomes very clear.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, it's got sound now.
It's got sound.
Yeah. That looks pretty good, yeah.
Okay, do you believe it? Is that true for you?
It can be.
It can be.
Yeah.
Okay. What does it need to shift from it can be, to it is?
Action.
Action, how specifically?
Well, there's a few things I didn't believe I could do, but now I can. I believe that I can do. So I'd have to go and test it out. I have to go and actually do those things.
Okay, good. So what I'd like you to do is, I'd like you to create a future in your mind where you are doing these things, these actions, so you can test in the world, get evidence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Now, a couple of ways of going about this. One, I could say, okay, put yourself into a future where you've already done and tested this in the world and know the consequences.
But still have to do it
Yeah, absolutely. So you,
myself.
good. You have to do it yourself. Now, what I'd like you to do is consider there are some actions to take. You know what those actions are.
Yeah.
So what I'd like you to do is you think about this as something you can do.
Oh yeah.
So know how you represent. You can do this.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you want to do this?
Yeah.
Okay. So the proposal to your unconscious mind is you go ahead and you do these things to test.
Yeah.
Because you want real evidence in the world that either supports or is evidence against the belief that you're forming.
Yeah.
Okay? If you're going to have this as a generative belief, you want to have it be evidence-based.
Yeah.
Okay. So the proposal to your unconscious, first of all, is will you support me in actually taking these actions as a test?
Yeah, no, I will.
Good. Okay. Thank you, unconscious. Okay. So, consider this. You currently have as a can. Okay. Do you want to do this?
Yeah.
Good. Will you do it?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Just checking. Okay. We don't want to make sure it's all congruent, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Do you have some idea of the time frame for testing this?
Well, it starts most likely next week.
Okay, good. And how much time, let's say it starts next week, most likely, how much time before you have evidence that either supports or evidence against?
A month.
A month, okay, good. So what I can do is envision a month from now. And what I can do is, in a month from now, I want you to review what you've done. Okay, and just check. You're going to be checking, do I now have evidence that supports this content as a new generative belief?
Yeah.
Good.
There is.
Fantastic. Okay. Okay, let's check some more on this. Just check with your unconscious. Is there any information or any concerns that your unconscious wants to provide? First of all, are there any concerns about what you've been doing?
No.
Okay. Is there any information your unconscious has for your conscious mind at this time?
Not at this time.
Okay, good. So let's just summarize what you've been doing. You found a limiting belief.
Yeah.
You know it's limiting because of the consequences in your life.
Yeah.
Okay. You became aware of the intention for having that old limiting belief.
Yeah.
Okay. You then put that aside. You then did preparation. You considered the content you'd like to have as a generative belief. You considered both the consequences of having that and the intention or intentions for that content being a generative belief. You tested the consequences against the intention for congruence. You proposed it to your unconscious to make sure your unconscious mind was on board as well. That's very important. You were then ready for the change process. You found the doubt. You compared the limiting belief with the doubt and identified submodality differences in how each was coded. You then found the generative belief, something you already believe that you know, you've got evidence is generative for you in terms of flowing consequences in your life. And you compared that with the doubt. Sorry, you compared that with the limiting belief.
Yes.
You found the submodality differences in coding.
Yep.
You now, at that point, you had all the information you need to change your belief.
Yep.
You took the limiting belief and you coded it as a doubt.
Yeah, I did.
You doubted it. And then you took the content you want to have as potentially a generative belief and gave it the submodality coding for a generative belief. Now, when you did the original comparison between the limiting belief and the generative belief, what you found there were only visual differences.
Yeah.
As soon as you transformed the content for the generative belief, so the content into a generative belief, a soundtrack turned on.
Yeah.
So you then got sound.
Yeah.
So it's now in. By the way, if you think about that content that you're going to be testing in the world as a generative belief,
yeah,
note it's got kinesthetics as well now.
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, what are the kinesthetics like? If you were to compare the kinesthetics of that representation.
It's different. I got a feeling in my hands now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And by the way, just note before unconscious what that represents, having the feeling in your hands.
Yeah, I know that already.
Yeah.
I've had that before a few times.
Yeah. Yeah. I got a mind read. Is that something to do with can do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I know you. We've
Yeah.
you know, we
We've
worked
worked
together
for it,
and so on. So that wasn't such a shot in the dark in a way. But there we go. Okay, so you're going to be testing this in the world. You've got a test period, roughly a month. You're probably going to start near the end of next week and run the test for a month. Then you're going to review. Okay, and I think that's a healthy thing to do. In that, in terms of beliefs, you want beliefs that are backed up by evidence.
Yeah.
Okay. Damn good idea. Okay. So, thank you very much for the demonstration.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, my pleasure.